Why was everyone ignoring her at the briefing table? 22 operators stood at attention on the steel deck of the USS Vigilance, their reflections staring back at them from the polished floor. The hum of the carrier's engines pulsed beneath their boots, a steady vibration that carried through steel bones and quiet nerves alike. She was the only woman in the line, Lieutenant Commander Aloan Reev, still, steady, unreadable. The deck smelled faintly of disinfectant and ocean salt, the scent of control barely masking the chaos that lived in the hearts of soldiers who had seen too much. Alone's eyes stayed fixed forward. Stillness was her armor. She had learned that lesson long ago in another country under another name. Then the door opened. Admiral Thaddeus Blackwood strode in, metals clinking, flanked by two aides who whispered into tablets like nervous shadows. His presence filled the deck the way a storm rolls across calm seas, loud, absolute, impossible to ignore. At ease, he barked. No one moved. Blackwood liked it that way. He liked control, and he liked the power that came with watching hardened operators flinch. Especially, they said, when it was a woman standing among them. He started down the line questions about readiness, logistics, deployments. Polite answers followed, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 weeks ago, sir. Then his boots stopped in front of her. Lieutenant Commander, he glanced down at his tablet. Reeve, is it? Yes, sir. 8 months in this unit, transferred from 5th Group Support. He looked up, letting disbelief stain his voice. Support, and they fast-tracked you into special operations. I go where ordered, sir. A few of the younger men smiled behind tight lips, reading his tone, knowing what was coming. Tell me, the Admiral said, leaning closer, have you seen combat or was your support confined to safe zones? I've seen action, sir. Is that so? The smirk was already forming, the kind that dared her to prove him wrong. Then tell me, Lieutenant Commander, he said, his voice carrying across the deck, what's your count? The air changed. Everyone knew what he meant. Confirmed eliminations. The unofficial number that lived in whispers and bar fights, a measure of worth in circles that pretended not to keep score. Respectfully, she said, I don't keep count. Laughter rippled down the line, thin, obedient, uncertain. Blackwood chuckled louder, performing for the room. Come now, Lieutenant Commander. Numbers don't lie, how many? The aide beside him tried to interrupt, a small whisper, urgent, but the Admiral waved him off. Alone's gaze flicked just once toward the aide's pale, panicked face, then back to the Admiral. He didn't notice. I'm waiting, he said. Her voice, when it came, was even, calm. 467, sir. Silence. The wordless kind that feels like gravity. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then something drained from Blackwood's face, color, confidence, maybe both. He tried to laugh again, but it caught halfway up his throat. What did you say? 467 confirmed, 83 probable. The aide stepped forward, tablet trembling in his hands. The screen glowed red with classification warnings. He whispered again, this time the Admiral listened. Recognition hit him like recoil. He knew that number. He knew who she was. The line broke formation. 21 men suddenly stood beside a myth. Blackwood's voice came quieter now, stripped of performance. Your previous designation. Task Force Umbra, Operational Detachment Sigma, call sign Spectre. Someone exhaled a curse. Chief Warwick, the man 4 places down, didn't move, but his spine straightened, eyes fixed ahead. Dismissed, Blackwood said finally. Everyone dismissed. No one spoke as they filed out. 15 minutes later, she stood outside his office. She was never early, never late. Precision had kept her alive. The door hissed open. Sit, he said. The room was dim, the walls bare. On the desk between them sat a single black-barred file, the kind reserved for things that didn't exist. 12 years, he said quietly, staring at the folder. I've carried the Khyber Pass operation as mine. Yes, sir. 43 men credited to my command decisions that day. 42, sir. He looked up, the correction hung there heavy. You were never supposed to resurface, he said. Operational security, she answered. Then why now? New administration, she said, new priorities. He studied her, then asked the one question he already knew the answer to. The count, is it accurate? To the best of my knowledge, she said. I didn't keep tally, JCOG Intelligence did. For what purpose? You know why, sir. Asset valuation, cost-benefit analysis. He closed the file, the paper whispering against the metal desk. What happens next, Spectre? That depends on you, sir. When she left, he was already on a secure line, voice low. Yes, Mr. Secretary, she's here. No, I don't think that will be necessary. Word traveled fast on a ship. By noon, the number 467 moved through the vigilance like a current. People stopped talking when she entered a room. Some saluted sharper, some looked away. At 1300 hours, she sat alone in the mess, meal untouched. Chief Warwick approached, tray in hand. Mind if I join you, Lieutenant Commander? She gestured to the seat. They ate in silence until he said quietly, Spectre, I thought it was a ghost story, something they told us in training. Aloan didn't look up. They said you killed a Taliban commander with a spoon. She paused, then corrected softly, it was a fork, and he was Taliban. Warwick nodded slowly. The men are talking, the number, is it real? Numbers don't lie, she said. He leaned in. You understand this changes things. Some of these guys have done 10 deployments and haven't cracked triple digits. I didn't keep count, she said. They did. He watched her push her tray away, half-eaten. Blackwood, been in his office all day, he said. Secure calls, visitors, something's happening. Something always happening, Chief, she stood. That's why we exist. Night fell. The ship dimmed to red lighting. Aloan moved through her small quarters, bunk, desk, a single smooth stone with a white line across it. The only personal thing she owned. She stretched in silence, every movement deliberate, every muscle holding the memory of old battles. Then washed her face in cold water and stared into the mirror, the scar along her jaw, the uneven eye from a blast in Karachi, silver in her dark hair. A map of survival. Sleep came easily, trained, not earned. At 200, her eyes opened. Something had changed. The rhythm of the ship felt wrong. Then her secure tablet lit up blue. EXFIL protocol initiated. Primary asset compromise, DETCTED. Terminate current assignment. Extraction point Charlie, Auth Sigma 9 Black Lake. She memorized it, erased the screen, and went for the hidden compartment under her bunk. A sidearm, alternate ID, unissued comms. A soft knock. It's Warwick, came a whisper. You need to move now. She opened the door a crack. The corridor glowed red. His face was tight, urgent. 3 counterintel officers just boarded. They're checking IDs deck by deck. They've got your file photo. You should go back to your quarters, Chief. Blackwood sent them. Whatever happened at Khyber Pass, he's making sure it stays buried. For the first time that day, emotion crossed her face, a flicker of something hard and old. What I did in Khyber Pass, she said quietly, was save his life. What he did was leave me behind. Warwick stared. The report said one operator held the pass for 6 hours while the wounded were evacuated. 6 hours, 17 minutes, she said. 42 confirmed eliminations. That's where the count began. Bootsteps echoed from down the hall. Go, she told him. Whatever happens next isn't for witnesses. After he was gone, she sealed the door, gathered her kit, and knelt by the hidden panel in the wall. It opened with a faint click, revealing darkness, the ship's maintenance shafts. She slipped inside just as voices reached her quarters. The metal tunnels were narrow and hot. She moved in silence, memorized turns guiding her like muscle memory. The Vigilance was a floating city, 6,000 souls, but only a handful knew how to vanish inside its veins. Somewhere above her, the Admiral's voice barked orders. Somewhere below, counterintel swept the decks. Halfway through a crawlspace junction, she froze. A metallic scrape behind her, deliberate. Someone else was in the shaft. They'd anticipated her route. She turned left instead of forward, heading toward the communications center. If Blackwood was coordinating the hunt, that's where the signal would come from. Minutes later, she reached the grate overlooking the comm room. 3 men in plain uniforms moved between glowing screens, counterintel, armed. The duty officer at the console looked terrified. "We need access to secure Channel 7, one said. "That's the Admiral's private line," the ensign protested. "We have authorization." Orders slid across the desk. The ensign complied. The moment the system came online, the lights cut out. Darkness. Then crimson emergency glow. By the time their eyes adjusted, she was already moving. A blur from the shadows. 7 seconds, 3 men down, disarmed, breathing. The ensign froze, hands raised. "Relax," she said. "I'm not here for you." Her fingers danced across the terminal, security overrides, classified access, buried layers opening one by one. "You have 2 choices," she said, eyes on the screen. "Stay and watch or leave and forget." "Who are you?" he whispered. "Someone correcting a mistake." He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll report counterintel interference." "Good choice." She inserted a drive, copied data, then found what she came for, a file labeled KYBER Pass Operation, Command Review, Classified. The video began. A younger Blackwood, blood on his face, being loaded into a helicopter. Snow, gunfire, a lone figure holding the pass, female, calm, precise. The camera caught his voice. "No extraction for Spectre. Mission parameters remain." The feed ended with the explosion that swallowed the mountainside. She copied everything, then activated the ship-wide emergency broadcast override. All screens on the Vigilance flickered. The footage played everywhere: the mess, the bridge, the Admiral's quarters. Truth unfiltered. On the bridge, Blackwood's voice broke. "Shut it down now." But they couldn't. "It's transmitting to CENTCOM, Pentagon, JSOC," someone said. The doors opened. She stepped in, calm, collected, the ghost they'd tried to erase. "Numbers don't lie, Admiral," she said. 42 in the pass, 425 after, all yours." His face collapsed under the weight of it. She laid a single dog tag on the console. "Blackwood's own." "I kept it," she said, "to remind myself that sometimes the people we save don't deserve it." Outside, the ocean stretched endless beneath a bruised dawn. Inside, the myth of a soldier began to surface. Not a weapon, not a statistic, but a woman carved by betrayal and duty into something both human and more than human. And though no one knew it yet, this was only the beginning of the reckoning. Because somewhere, deep in the classified networks that now screamed with alarms, another name was already blinking to life. A man who had given the order 12 years ago. General Victor Hargrove. And Spectre was coming for him. Why was the carrier so quiet? 6,000 souls aboard the Vigilance, yet the hallways felt hollow, like the ship itself was holding its breath. Aloan Reev, Spectre, moved through its metal arteries unseen. The crimson emergency lights still pulsed from the broadcast override she'd unleashed only an hour before. Each flash painted her face in alternating blood and shadow. The ocean outside looked calm. Inside, command was collapsing. Admiral Blackwood had been relieved, escorted to his quarters under guard. No one knew who gave the order. only that it came from higher than any admiral could reach. And through the steel decks, whispers carried. She did it. Spectres alive. 467. Warwick found her near the aft flight corridor, checking an access panel. You just declared war on half of Washington, he said quietly. I declared the truth, she answered. They started the war. He scanned the hallway. You shouldn't be here. The ship's locked down. Command wants you on a secure transport to Norfolk. Transport means containment. Containment means silence. Then what's your plan? She turned a small screwdriver sealing the panel. Find who ordered Khyber Pass. End it at the source. Warwick exhaled. You really think you can take them all? No, she said simply, but I can make them visible. That was the first time he saw something flicker behind her calm. Fatigue maybe, or faith trying to return after too many years without it. Help me, she added. It wasn't an order. It was something rarer, a request. Warwick nodded, always. By dawn, the Vigilance steamed through gray seas under strict radio silence. But inside the command tower, the air was anything but calm. Commander Hayes, the ship's XO, faced the secure console that had been patched directly to the Pentagon. The encrypted voice on the line demanded updates every 10 minutes. Status on Lieutenant Commander Reev. She's confined to quarters, Hayes lied. His pulse betrayed him. The voice crackled. Maintain isolation. JSOC response team en route. Do not engage. Yes, sir. He ended the call, then looked toward the corridor outside, empty. But he knew she was already gone. The maintenance shafts led her to the lower hangar deck, where the air reeked of jet fuel and salt. Through the half-open blast door, she could see the sea glimmering under the rising sun. Her secure tablet vibrated again. New message, no signature. Subject EXFIL update. Proceed to extraction, Charlie. Transport arriving 4:30. Bring no equipment. Burn all evidence. Authorized Sigma 9. Sigma 9 again, the same code as before. But something was wrong. The cadence of the encryption, the phrasing, too clean, too deliberate. Whoever sent it wasn't trying to hide. They were pretending to. Aloan memorized the coordinates, then wiped the device. She'd check it her own way. She reached the auxiliary comm station, one of the few systems not routed through the Admiral's network. Its hum was steady, neutral, waiting. She began tracing the signal origin manually, old school, bouncing through satellite relays. The trail wound through NavyNet, then out through civilian channels, too public for a true extraction order. The line ended in a ghost node within naval intelligence. Someone inside the intelligence branch had sent her that message. Someone who knew she would suspect it. At 4:10, Warwick entered quietly. We're 20 minutes out from the coordinates you were given. She didn't answer. They've got a chopper prepping on deck, he said. Orders say it's yours. Aloan closed the comm terminal and faced him. Do me a favor, Chief. Run the serial on that helicopter. He frowned but nodded, leaving. When he returned 5 minutes later, his expression was tight. It's not in the flight manifest, he said. No pilot listed, no transponder filed. Then it's not mine, she replied. It's theirs. Whose? The ones who sent the message. He understood instantly. They're not extracting you, he whispered. They're cleaning you. 4:30 hours. The rotor wash battered the deck as the black helicopter settled on the pad. 2 men in unmarked flight suits waited beside it, visors down. No insignia, no names. Spectre watched from the catwalk above, where it crouched beside her. They'll expect you to walk out calm, he said. They'll get calm, she replied, just not the kind they want. She descended the ladder, footsteps steady, wind whipping her hair across her face. The deck crew pretended not to see her. Fear can make people invisible. Lieutenant Commander Reev, one of the men said through his visor. We're your extraction team. Identification, she asked. He produced a laminated card, too pristine for a carrier deck, too new for authenticity. She nodded slowly, understood. Then she moved. A blur, 3 strikes, elbow-palm twist. The first man folded, unconscious. The second reached for his weapon but froze as her sidearm pressed against his visor. "Who sent you?" she asked. No answer, just the faint hiss of breath behind the mask. She removed it herself. The face underneath was barely 30, clean-cut, frightened. "Who sent you?" she repeated. He swallowed. "Orders came from Joint Intelligence. Sigma 9 channel, we were told to secure you." Secure or silence? He hesitated too long. That was answer enough. She ejected the magazine from his rifle, handed it back. "Tell them I refuse transport, then get off my deck." They fled toward the chopper. Within minutes, the aircraft lifted off and disappeared into cloud. Warwick exhaled. That was subtle. "I'm out of time," she said. "They won't stop now." He looked at her. "What do you need?" Access to Blackwood's private files, everything he tried to bury. They entered the Admiral's quarters at 500. The guards at the door didn't stop her. None dared. The room smelled of cologne and fear. Papers lay scattered across the desk, declassified fragments, mission charts, shredded notes. In the corner, Blackwood sat on his bunk, head in his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were rimmed red. "You've ruined me." "I didn't ruin you, sir," she said softly. "You did that 12 years ago." He stood unsteady. "You don't understand. It was never personal. It was orders. Khyber Pass was." "A cover-up," she interrupted. "For what?" His mouth opened, then closed. He moved toward the desk, rummaging through papers until he found a single photograph. Faded, snow-covered mountains, a group of operators smiling at the camera. "We were supposed to eliminate an arms conduit," he said, "but intelligence was wrong. The convoy carried diplomats, civilians. We hit them anyway. The cleanup required erasure." "And Umbra?" "Umbra was the erasure," he whispered. "They used you to erase us." Aloan studied the photo. Half the faces in it were crossed out in red pen. "Who gave the order?" He hesitated. "General Victor Hargrove." The name fell like a blade between them. "He authorized the kill list," Blackwood continued. "Every operation you carried out after that. He built Umbra to do what official forces couldn't, and when it was done, he buried it." She stared at him. "Why tell me now?" "Because they're coming for me too," he said, voice shaking. "You think I ordered that extraction team? Hargrove did. He wants this ship silent before sunrise." "Then you have a choice," she said. "Run or help me expose him." Blackwood laughed weakly. "Expose a 4-star general. You'll need more than truth." "I've got the footage," she said, "and your confession." His expression faltered. "You recorded this." "Numbers don't lie, Admiral." By sunrise, a storm rolled across the horizon. The Vigilance turned into the wind, preparing for rough seas. Spectre stood at the bow, watching lightning flicker across distant clouds. The rain hit like cold glass. Warwick approached again, water streaming down his uniform. "I pulled what files I could," he said. "Some encrypted logs reference a network codename Umbra Continuum. Looks like Hargrove's still running operations under the radar." She nodded. "He's not done cleaning." "There's more," he said, handing her a waterproof tablet. "A transmission from an old JSOC frequency. It's addressed to you." She activated it. "From CAPTK Vega Ret. Subject, if you're reading this. Spectre, if you survived Khyber Pass, then they lied to both of us. Hargrove's not the only one. Meet me where it started. Vega." Aloan's eyes narrowed. "She's alive." "Who?" "Captain Catherine Vega, founder of Task Force Umbra, officially dead 3 years ago. Where's the meat? The Arabian Sea, she said, scanning the coordinates. A submarine registered as decommissioned. She's calling ghosts home. At 700, she and Warwick stood on the flight deck as another helicopter prepped for launch. This one reel, logged and armed. Commander Hayes joined them, rain plastering his hair to his forehead. Orders from the Secretary of the Navy, he said. You're to rendezvous with Allied assets in international waters. You'll be debriefed en route. Aloan studied him. You read those orders yourself. Yes. Then you know what this is. Hayes met her gaze. I know enough to see what kind of officer you are. Just bring back something that justifies the storm you've started. She offered a small nod. Respect, not compliance. Warwick loaded her gear into the chopper. You sure about this? No, she said, but certainty's a luxury ghosts can't afford. As she climbed aboard, he stopped her with a hand on her arm. Commander, that number, 467. She turned. Rain streaked her face like war paint. Was it worth it? Her answer came quiet, almost lost in the wind. It depends who you ask. The dead don't get a vote. The rotors thundered to life. The helicopter lifted from the deck, banking east into the storm. Below, the USS Vigilance shrank into gray mist, a ship carrying secrets that could sink nations. Inside the cockpit, the pilot's voice crackled through the headset. ETA to rendezvous, 90 minutes. Spectre gazed out the window. Lightning carved the sky into veins of white. For the first time in years, she felt the unfamiliar pull of something like hope, thin, fragile, dangerous. She closed her eyes. The sound of rain against the glass merged with memory, the scream of wind through the Khyber Pass, the voices of men she couldn't save, the order that left her alone. Her lips moved silently, a prayer, a promise, maybe both. Not this time. Below the churning clouds, in a sea too deep for radar, something vast stirred. A submarine rising from black water, its hull gleaming like a memory resurfacing. Aloan opened her eyes as the radar pinged softly. Contact, the pilot said, bearing 057. Through the mist, a shape emerged, sleek, silent, impossible. She leaned forward, voice steady. Take us down, she said. They've been waiting. The helicopter descended toward the waves, rotors whipping spray into silver arcs. For a moment the world seemed suspended between sea and sky, between truth and erasure. And in that moment, as steel met salt and the past reached up to meet her, Aloan Reev, Spectre, understood something that would carry her through every shadow yet to come. Some ghosts don't haunt the living. They haunt the lies that made them. The sea looked dead. Flat black, endless. Only the faint strobe of lightning gave it shape, flashes that caught the glint of salt spray, and the rising tower of steel cutting through the surface. Jesus, the pilot murmured, that thing wasn't on any chart. Spectre leaned forward, her eyes calm as the massive shape of the submarine breached fully. It moved like something alive, ancient, deliberate. The name stenciled across its side was almost unreadable under layers of paint and rust. USS Vindicator, SSN 821. Officially decommissioned 10 years ago, lost with all hands in the Bay of Bengal. But the dead, it seemed, had a way of resurrecting themselves. Bring us down, she said. The pilot hesitated. Commander, we're landing on. Trust me. As the helicopter hovered over the forward deck, a panel of the sub's hull slid open, revealing a platform bathed in red light. Figures emerged, armed, disciplined, faces hidden under black masks. They guided the chopper down with silent precision. The moment the skids touched steel, Spectre unbuckled and stepped out into the storm. The air tasted of salt and metal and memories she'd spent years trying to drown. Identify yourself, one of the masked figures shouted over the rotor noise. Lieutenant Commander Aloan Reev, Task Force Umbra. The man paused, then slowly he raised his hand in salute. Welcome home, Spectre. Inside, the submarine was a labyrinth of humming machinery and recycled air. The corridor lights flickered a dull amber, the mark of an off-grid vessel. As she followed her silent escort deeper, she noticed the changes. Unmarked control panels, stripped insignias, walls painted a dull, matte black to absorb light. This wasn't a Navy vessel anymore. It was something else, something purpose-built for secrets. They stopped before a heavy blast door. It hissed open. And there she was, Captain Catherine Vega. Older but unmistakable, her sharp jawline softened by years, eyes still bright with that unflinching steadiness Aloan remembered. Spectre, Vega said quietly, you look like hell. Aloan managed a thin smile. You look alive. Rumors of my death were convenient, Vega said, for both of us. They stared at each other for a long moment, two ghosts measuring what time had taken and what it hadn't. Come on, Vega said, we have a lot to talk about. They entered the command room, low ceiling, glowing maps projected on curved displays, silent figures manning stations. The hum of the engines filled every pause. Umbra Continuum, Vega began. The name you've been hearing. It's not just a network, it's a directive. After Khyber Pass, Hargrove turned the remnants of our task force into a shadow command. He used our identities to run off-the-books operations under new aliases. Funding, weapons, personnel, all funneled through shell units hidden inside JSOC and naval intelligence. Spectre's gaze drifted to the glowing world map on the wall. Red markers blinked across half a dozen countries, conflict zones, covert strikes, deniable events. Those are Umbra operations, she asked. Still active, Vega confirmed. Every one of them under the same authorization you thought you destroyed. Aloan's jaw tightened. You mean my name's still on them? Yes, and they're killing under it. The silence that followed felt heavy, almost sacred. Vega continued. We've been intercepting fragments of internal transmissions for months. Someone's reactivating assets that were never meant to exist. And after your broadcast from the Vigilance, Hargrove went dark. Whatever he's planning, it's escalating. Spectre's voice dropped to a whisper. He's covering tracks. Mine, yours, everyone's. Exactly, which means we're out of time. Later in the crew quarters, Aloan sat alone on a metal bunk. The hum of the submarine vibrated through her bones. Her reflection stared back from the small steel mirror on the wall, the same scar, the same tired eyes, but now something else behind them. The flicker of purpose returning. A soft knock came. Vega stepped in holding a sealed folder. I wanted to show you this myself, she said. Hargrove's kill list, the full one. She opened it. Inside were photos, soldiers, analysts, medics, everyone marked deceased in red ink. Umbra's original operators, Vega said. We thought you were all dead. Turns out we were just next. Spectre flipped through the photos until one stopped her cold. A woman, dark hair, young, her eyes alive with quiet defiance. Who's this? Name's Anya Salim, Vega said. Intel translator. She defected after Khyber Pass. Hargrove had her erased, but rumor says she's alive somewhere in Eastern Europe. She may have files proving Umbra's existence. Coordinates. Last trace was a safe house in Riga. Aloan closed the file. Then that's where I'm going. Vega shook her head. Not alone. Umbra might be gone, but some of us still breathe. You have a team. Not a big one, but enough. 3 days later, under a slate-gray sky off the Baltic coast, a stealth craft surfaced from beneath the waves. Spectre and 3 others boarded it, Vega, an ex-NSA operative named Drex, and a medic called Lanny. No names beyond that. No ranks. The plan was simple. Reach Riga, locate Anya Salim, recover her data, and expose Hargrove's network before it vanished completely. but nothing involving Umbra was ever simple. The city greeted them with cold rain and gray streets. Eastern Europe in winter, faceless, unforgiving, perfect for ghosts. They moved through back alleys, blending into the gray tide of civilians. Spectre wore a civilian coat, her sidearm hidden beneath it. Her mind cataloged every reflection, every window, every movement. Old habits never died, they just changed shape. Drex kept pace beside her, whispering updates through an encrypted comm. Target location ahead. Third floor, abandoned textile plant. Vega's voice crackled in her ear. Thermal scans show one heat source. Could be Salem, could be a trap. Everything's a trap, Aloan murmured. They entered the building. Dust hung in the air like ghosts of old industry. Their footsteps echoed softly. Third floor, a single flickering light. Aloan motioned the others to cover positions, then stepped forward, weapon low. Anya Salem, she called. A shape moved from the shadows, small, cautious. A woman, mid-30s, hands raised slightly. You came, she said. Her accent was faint but familiar. Depends who you are, Aloan replied. The woman stepped closer, her face illuminated now. It was her. The same eyes from the photo, older but unmistakable. I'm Anya, she said, and I know why you're here. An hour later, they sat in the corner office surrounded by old machinery. Anya set a battered laptop on the desk and powered it up. This is what they killed for, she said. Umbra's shadow ledger, missions, approvals, payments, all tied to Hargrove's authorization codes. The screen filled with encrypted strings and classified seals. Even Vega's hardened expression faltered. Good God, she murmured. This could bring down half the Defense Council. It will, Anya said, if you live long enough to deliver it. Before she could explain, the window shattered. A burst of gunfire tore through the room. Contact, Drex shouted, diving for cover. The walls exploded in dust and glass. Spectre dragged Anya down, shielding her as bullets chewed the concrete. 3 hostiles, south stairwell, Vega's voice cut through the comm. Move now. Spectre returned fire, calculated bursts. 2 down. 1 vanished behind the doorway. Lanny, cover rear. On it. They moved fast, practiced. Muscle memory born of 100 missions that had never officially existed. But as they reached the exit, a grenade rolled across the floor. Aloan grabbed Anya, throwing her down as the blast ripped through the hallway. The shockwave threw her against a pillar, ears ringing. When her vision cleared, she saw Drex on the ground still, Lanny pulling him, shouting his name. He didn't respond. Spectre stood, blood in her mouth, weapon ready. Her calm had returned, cold, mechanical, absolute. Go, she told Vega, get her out. What about? Go. She moved back toward the smoke, alone. The hunter instinct. The part of her that had once been proud of the number they whispered about. 1 step, 2, breath steady. A shadow moved in the dust, tall, armored, silent. She fired first. The figure staggered but didn't fall. Tactical armor, Umbra gear. Then it spoke, a man's voice through a modulator. You should have stayed buried, Spectre. She froze. Who are you? The man lifted his visor just enough to reveal gray eyes and a scar across his chin. Lieutenant Mason Hale, Task Force Umbra, your replacement. The realization hit her like recoil. Hargrove hadn't ended Umbra, he'd rebuilt it. The man moved fast, strike, block, counter. Spectre matched him blow for blow, 2 ghosts carved from the same shadow doctrine. She disarmed him with a twist, but he recovered, catching her arm, slamming her against the wall. You were the myth, he said. The perfect operator, but myths get replaced. She drove her knee into his ribs, forcing distance. Not by puppets. He grinned and pulled a detonator from his vest. The light blinked red. Too late, he said. We're all ghosts now. Then the floor erupted. She remembered only fragments after that: collapsing walls, falling steel, Vega shouting her name. When the world steadied again, she was half buried under debris. Smoke filled the air. The building burned. She clawed free, coughing, vision swimming. The others were gone. No sign of Vega, no sign of Anya. Only the rain outside and the sound of distant sirens. Aloan staggered into the street, face streaked with soot. The flash drive that held the ledger was still clutched in her bleeding hand. Through the haze, she saw a van speeding away, black, unmarked. She tried to run after it, but her legs gave out. A shadow stepped from the alley, Warwick. How she gasped. "I tracked your beacon," he said, kneeling beside her. "You didn't think I'd let you disappear again, did you?" He looked at the burning building, then at her trembling hand. "Do you have it?" She opened her palm. The drive gleamed faintly under the rain. "Then we're not done," he said. She nodded, blood on her lips, breath ragged. Somewhere in the distance, the van vanished into gray. And for the first time, Spectre realized she wasn't chasing ghosts anymore. They were chasing her. Why was the train half empty at dawn? Because fear travels faster than passengers. Spectre sat by the window, face hidden beneath a gray hood. The landscape of Eastern Europe rolled past in shades of frost and smoke, a quiet world unaware of the war she carried inside her veins. Across from her, Warwick watched the countryside blur by. His left arm was bandaged from the firefight, his eyes bloodshot but steady. Between them sat the small metal drive, the one they'd bled for, the one Anya Salim had died protecting. "She didn't make it," he said softly. Spectre didn't answer. Outside, the world looked peaceful. Inside, she was counting ghosts again. When the explosion had ripped through the factory, Vega and Anya vanished in the firestorm. No confirmation, no bodies, just another mission that ended like every other, unfinished. But the ledger survived, and that meant someone would come for it. Warwick finally broke the silence. "Where do we go now?" "Berlin," she said. "There's a dead drop site under CIA cover. If we can reach it, we can upload the ledger into the open network. Once it's out there, no one can erase it." He nodded, "And after that?" She looked out the window again. "There is no after." The train rocked gently as it sped across the plains. The rhythmic clatter almost felt calming, until she noticed the reflection in the glass. A man 2 cars down, pretending to read a newspaper, eyes flicking up too often, shoulders too square, military. She murmured without turning her head, "Second car, aisle seat, watching us." Warwick followed her gaze. "You sure?" "I don't get unsure," she said quietly. "Not anymore." They waited. Minutes passed. The man stood, adjusted his coat, and began walking toward them. Spectre's hand slid beneath her jacket. Warwick tensed. "We can take him." "No, let's see who he's calling." The man reached for his earpiece, muttering something into it as he passed the next compartment. Then he stopped, eyes meeting hers through the glass. Recognition. Then his hand went to his belt. Spectre moved first. The shot was muffled but loud enough to send panic down the train. The man dropped instantly, weapon clattering across the floor. Screams erupted. People scrambled for cover. Warwick grabbed her arm. "We need to move." They darted through the panicked crowd, pushing past passengers. Alarms blared as the train slowed. By the time the security response team reached the car, they were already gone, out the emergency exit, into the frozen morning. They moved on foot through fields of frost and broken stone, the air sharp with cold. "Who was he?" Warwick asked between breaths. "Umbra," she said. "Hargrove's cleaning crew." He cursed under his breath. "They've got reach this deep in Europe." "They've got reach everywhere," she said. "That's why the ledger matters." Hours later, they reached an abandoned village, concrete shells, rusted playgrounds, windows like hollow eyes. They sheltered in what used to be a church, the roof half collapsed but walls intact. Spectre laid out the drive, connecting it to a portable terminal she carried in her pack. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. "Encryption's layered," she murmured. "Hargrove used military-grade vaulting. I'll need time." Warwick handed her a ration bar. "We've got time until they find us." She smiled faintly. "That's optimistic." He sat beside her, the silence settling heavy between them. After a while he said quietly, "You ever regret it?" She looked up. "Which part?" "Any of it, the missions, the choices." Her fingers paused over the keyboard. "Regret doesn't fit in the bag," she said. "It weighs too much." Warwick gave a sad smile. "You sound like my old co. He used to say we don't carry regrets, we carry ghosts." Spectre looked at him, eyes unreadable. "Then I'm running out of space." That night she couldn't sleep. The cold crept into her bones, the kind that reminded you you're still alive but wish you were. Outside, the wind moved through the trees like whispers. She stood at the broken doorway, watching the dark horizon. Warwick stirred from where he sat against the wall. "You ever wonder what happens when this ends?" "This doesn't end," she said. "It just shifts forms." He studied her in the dim light. "You talk like someone who's already dead." "Maybe I am." He was silent for a moment, then said softly, "You're not alone, not yet." She turned toward him, and for a second the hardness in her face cracked. There was grief there, raw, unspoken, human. "I used to believe in missions," she whispered, "that we were the blade keeping the world clean. Then I saw who held the handle." Warwick didn't answer. Sometimes silence was the only respect the truth deserved. By dawn the terminal beeped softly. The encryption broke. Lines of classified data filled the screen, operations spanning 15 years. Political assassinations disguised as accidents. Black site transfers under humanitarian cover. Entire wars shaped by invisible hands. "This is it," Warwick said, leaning over her shoulder. "Not yet," she replied. "We still need the uplink." She opened the satellite map. The closest safe point was a CIA relay tower outside Berlin, 200 kilometers west. "We'll need transport," he said. She nodded. "And cover. Hargrove will flood the border." They packed fast. By the time the sun rose, they were on the road again, a stolen truck rattling down back highways toward Germany. The radio stayed off. The hum of the engine filled the silence. "Do you think Vega made it?" Warwick asked. "She always makes it," Aloan said softly, though part of her didn't believe it. Then from the corner of her eye she caught movement, a black SUV cresting the hill behind them. Then another. "Company," she said. Warwick checked the mirror. 2 vehicles, maybe 3. "Umbre." The chase began. The truck roared down the narrow road, tires spitting gravel. Spectre took the wheel, eyes sharp. "Hold on," she said. The SUVs closed in fast, lights flashing, weapons ready. Gunfire erupted, rounds tearing through the truck's rear glass. Warwick leaned out, returning fire. One SUV swerved, smoke billowing from its engine. "To left," he shouted. Spectre cut the wheel hard, skidding onto a dirt path that led through a forest. Branches whipped against the windshield, visibility dropping. One SUV followed, headlights slicing through the trees. She accelerated. "Get ready." "What for?" "You'll see." They hit a curve that opened onto a frozen river. Spectre didn't slow. "Are you insane?" The truck slammed onto the ice. Cracks spiderwebbed instantly under the weight, but she kept her foot down. The pursuing SUV followed, heavier, faster. At the midpoint, the ice gave way. The SUV vanished into black water, headlights flickering out. Spectre guided the truck toward the opposite bank, ice groaning beneath them. They made it barely. Warwick laughed in disbelief. "You're out of your damn mind." "Probably," she said, "but we're alive." They abandoned the truck near an industrial district on the outskirts of Berlin. Night again. The air smelled of diesel and rain. The relay tower stood ahead, fenced, guarded, lights sweeping the perimeter. "Too tight to infiltrate clean," Warwick said. Spectre crouched behind a stack of containers, studying the pattern of patrols. "We don't need clean, just enough time." They waited until the wind masked their movements, then moved in, two shadows among 1,000. She climbed the outer scaffolding while Warwick looped the cameras below. The rain slicked the steel, turning every step into a test of balance and nerve. At the top, she connected the drive to a maintenance port and initiated the uplink. 30 seconds, she whispered. Below, Warwick's voice came through the comm. "We've got movement, 2 guards inbound." "Hold them off," she said. The upload bar crept forward, 60%, 75%, 90%. Then the line cut. A static hiss filled her earpiece. "Warwick." No response. She looked down and froze. Armed figures surrounded the base of the tower, black uniforms, Umbra insignia. One of them dragged Warwick into the open, blood streaking down his face. Another raised a loudspeaker. "Spectre, surrender and we let him live." Her fingers tightened on the railing. The upload resumed faintly, 92%, 93%. She whispered into her mic, "Hold on, Chief." "Don't," his voice cracked with pain. "Finish it." She looked at the progress bar, then at him. 95%, 96%. A sniper round hit inches from her hand. The next one wouldn't miss. Spectre grabbed the cable, rerouted it into her wrist-mounted transmitter. Manual uplink, direct. 97%. Another shot tore through her shoulder. She bit back a scream, blood spilling down her sleeve. 98%. "Spectre," the voice below roared, "stop now." 99%. She closed her eyes. "Not this time." 100%. The screen flashed upload complete. The network came alive. Thousands of secure servers pinged with incoming data. The ledger was free. Below, Warwick smiled weakly through the blood. "Told you we'd make it." The Umbra unit leader barked an order, then gunfire. Spectre fired back, leaping from the tower into the darkness. The fall was long, the impact brutal. Pain exploded through her ribs, but she rolled, crawled, forced herself up. Lights flashed behind her, shouts pursuit. She vanished into the storm. Hours later, in the back alleys of Berlin, she staggered into an abandoned metro tunnel. Her shoulder burned, her vision swam, but she kept moving. The tablet in her pocket buzzed. A single message blinked across the cracked screen. "Global distribution successful." Umbra Continuum files leaked. World press confirmed. She sank against the wall, breath trembling. It was done. Outside, alarms would already be sounding across the Pentagon, the State Department, the offices of men who thought themselves untouchable. The truth was out. But truth never came free. She looked at her bloodied hand, at the dirt and grit that had become part of her skin, and whispered, almost to herself, 467, and one more. At sunrise, Berlin was chaos. News channels screamed of black operations, assassinations, off-book wars. Names scrolled across every screen: generals, contractors, corporations. One name among them stood higher than the rest: General Victor Hargrove. And somewhere, far from the noise, inside a secure mountain compound, he stared at the screen in silence. Then he smiled. "Release Protocol Omega," he said to his aide. "What's Omega, sir?" "The contingency," Hargrove replied, "in case the ghosts ever came back to life." Why was the city so quiet when the world was burning? Berlin should have been chaos, sirens, protests, soldiers in the streets. But the silence that morning was heavier than noise. It was the sound of people realizing everything they believed in had teeth. Spectre moved through the back alleys like a shadow that refused to die. Her shoulder was bandaged with torn fabric, blood seeping through. Every movement sent pain shooting through her arm, but she kept walking. Above her, screens blared headlines in half a dozen languages. Classified documents leaked, global uproar. Secret operations linked to high-ranking U.S. officials. General Hargrove, under investigation. She watched, expression unreadable. For the first time, the world saw what she'd seen from the inside, the machinery of invisible wars grinding human lives into silence. But even as truth flooded the airwaves, she knew better. For men like Hargrove, exposure wasn't defeat, it was provocation. Thousands of miles away, in a bunker carved beneath the Colorado Rockies, General Victor Hargrove sat in a room lit by the blue glow of 50 screens. His face was calm, too calm, the kind of stillness that comes before an execution. A dozen analysts and aides crowded behind him, whispering updates. "Sir, we've lost all control of the narrative. The press has the full Umbra file. Several allies are cutting ties." "Let them," Hargrove said quietly. He gestured to a smaller console beside him. "Activate Omega Protocol." The aide hesitated. "Sir, that program was never field-tested." "Neither was God," Hargrove replied. The command sequence began. Red icons spread across the digital map of Europe, automated directives, dormant cells, assets long considered inactive. Each one flickered awake. "Operation Omega," he said. "Purge the assets, erase the evidence, and recover the primary subject." "You mean Spectre?" Hargrove's gaze hardened. "No, I mean Reev. I want the woman, not the legend." In Berlin, she sensed it before it started. The way a hunter feels when the forest goes silent. By afternoon, police checkpoints had appeared across the city. NATO intelligence offices were under lockdown. Private security convoys moved through the streets like predators in daylight. She needed to vanish again, and that meant finding help. She entered an old cafe near Alexanderplatz, where the windows were boarded and the air smelled of burnt coffee and dust. In the back booth sat a man she hadn't seen in years. CIA field liaison, code name Halcyon. "Jesus," he muttered when she approached, "you look like hell." "I've been busy," she said. He gestured to the seat. "You realize you've just lit the world on fire, right?" "I didn't light it," she said. "I just turned on the lights." He leaned forward. "You made enemies you can't even pronounce, Reev. Langley's divided. Half want to protect you, half want to disavow everything you ever did." She met his gaze. "And what about you?" Halcyon sighed. "I owe Vega my life, so by extension, yeah, I'm on your side, but you need to move. Omega's active." She froze. "Omega?" "Last resort failsafe. Hargrove designed it to wipe the slate clean. Every Umbra asset, every record, every operative who ever touched the project. It's a global kill switch." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "How long?" "Hours, maybe less. They're using biometric locators tied to your old ID protocols." "Which means they can track me." "Exactly." She stood. "Then we end Omega before it ends us." Halcyon shook his head. "You can't stop it, but you might be able to redirect it." "Where?" "There's a control node under NATO's Joint Command Facility in Brussels. You take that, you take Omega offline." Spectre's eyes narrowed. "Get me there." Halcyon hesitated. "It's a fortress." So was Khyber Pass. By nightfall, they were on the road again, a convoy of one. An old armored van stripped of insignia, engines humming low. Warwick drove, pale but conscious. He'd found her again hours earlier, stubborn as gravity. "I thought you were dead," she told him. He smiled weakly. "You're bad luck, Commander. Every time I leave, something explodes." Halcyon sat in the back, tapping on a satellite rig. Intercepts say Hargrove's already mobilized strike teams. They're closing in from 3 countries. Spectre reloaded her weapon, voice flat. Then we'll move faster. Outside, the Autobahn stretched endlessly, lights smearing across wet glass. For a moment, it almost looked peaceful, until the drones appeared. Tiny black, unmarked. Warwick saw them first. Contact 6 o'clock. The night erupted. Missiles streaked down like lightning. The van swerved hard, fire washing across the road. EMP burst, Halcyon shouted. They're disabling electronics. The rig fried instantly. The lights died. Spectre kicked the rear door open. The world became chaos, roaring wind, fire in the distance, the hiss of drones circling like vultures. She climbed onto the roof, rifle in hand. The first drone dove. She fired once. It exploded in a shower of sparks. Another followed. She hit that too. Then something hit back. The van flipped sideways, metal screaming. They crashed through the guardrail and tumbled into darkness. When she woke, the air was cold and wet. The van lay on its side in a drainage ditch, steam rising from the wreck. "Warwick," she called. He coughed weakly nearby, pinned under debris. Halcyon was already outside, dragging supplies from the wreckage. They'll triangulate this crash within minutes. Spectre pulled Warwick free, his leg bleeding but intact. He grimaced, still alive mostly. She handed him a pistol. "Stay that way." They climbed the embankment into a forest, the sound of distant engines closing in. Halcyon checked his GPS. "We're 50 kilometers from Brussels, but they're closing the border. We'll never make it by road." "Then we take the river," she said. He looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "In this weather. Better wet than dead." They found a small dock near dawn, a rusted fishing boat tied loosely to the pier. The river stretched out ahead, gray under a dying moon. As the engine sputtered to life, Warwick leaned against the railing, pale from blood loss. "You ever think," he said softly, "we're not supposed to win?" She stared into the water. "Winning isn't the point." "Then what is?" She looked at him, eyes dark and steady. "Making sure the truth doesn't die with us." Halcyon adjusted the course. "Once we reach the NATO perimeter, we're out of options. Either they let us in or Omega wipes everything within range." Spectre nodded. "Then we make sure they listen." At sunrise, the Brussels skyline appeared through the fog, glass towers, antennas, the faint hum of military patrols. The river fed into the city's underworks, old tunnels and drainage systems that predated the war, perfect entry points for ghosts. They ditched the boat, moving through the tunnels in silence. The sound of boots echoed faintly behind them, pursuers close. Halcyon found the access hatch to the NATO compound. Here, maintenance shaft, leads straight to the command node. Spectre went first. Warwick followed, limping but armed. The shaft opened into a concrete corridor lined with cables and humming conduits. At the end stood a reinforced door marked access restricted. Halcyon tapped his code pad. "Give me a minute." They didn't have a minute. Voices approached. Spectre pushed him aside. "Move." She planted a charge, stepped back. The door blew inward. They entered a room filled with screens and terminals, the heart of Omega. Halcyon rushed to the main console. "I can't shut it down remotely. It's locked behind a biometric trigger, Hargrove." "Can you reroute it?" "Maybe, but someone has to manually divert the signal from inside the control core." She didn't hesitate. "Tell me where." He looked at her, realization dawning. "You go in there, you don't come back out." She loaded a fresh mag. "That's what I'm good at." The core chamber was small, circular, glowing with red light. Hargrove's voice filled it, recorded, confident. "In the end, everything serves order, even ghosts." Spectre found the control conduit and started rerouting power manually. Every circuit burned under her hands. The room shook as failsafes triggered. Outside, Halcyon's voice came through the comm. "They're breaching the tunnel. 30 seconds. Just hold them. Spectre, tell Warwick he's not done yet." The final switch engaged. Energy surged through the console. Omega's signal flickered, then turned back on itself. Across Europe, Umbra nodes went dark one by one. Drones fell from the sky. Strike teams lost comms. The machine began to devour its own control. But the overload tore through the core. The explosion came not as fire, but as light. Halcyon and Warwick were thrown to the ground as the corridor blew open behind them. Flames roared through the tunnel. "Spectre," Warwick shouted, voice breaking. No answer. Through the smoke, he saw the chamber collapsing, cables snapping, sparks raining down. Then a figure stumbled out. Burned, bleeding, but alive. Aloan Reev, half shadow, half human, dragging herself through the debris. She collapsed beside them, coughing smoke. Halcyon stared in disbelief. "You did it. Omega's gone." She looked up, her face streaked with ash. "No, it's reborn." They both froze. "What do you mean?" "Systems don't die," she whispered. "They adapt." Miles away, deep in the mountain bunker, Hargrove watched as his monitors went dark one by one. A single light remained. In the corner of the screen, a new symbol blinked, the Umbra insignia reshaped, fractured. Then a voice spoke from the speakers, female, distorted, calm. "You built ghosts, General. Now we haunt you." Hargrove's expression didn't change. He simply closed his eyes, exhaled, and smiled. "Welcome back, Spectre." In Brussels, she sat beneath the collapsing lights, listening to the faint sirens outside. The world above was waking up to a new kind of truth, one that could never again be buried. Warwick knelt beside her, hands shaking. "What now?" She looked at him, eyes calm despite the blood. "Now," she said softly, "we wait for them to come. And when they do," she gave a tired smile, "we remind them that ghosts don't obey." The rain began to fall again, steady, relentless. And in its rhythm, the voiceover of the world's most dangerous woman seemed to whisper through the storm. "Sometimes, victory isn't about surviving. It's about making sure your enemies live long enough to see what they've done." Why was she still breathing when everything else had burned? Because some wars don't end, they just run out of sound. The tunnel had collapsed behind them. The fire was out, replaced by the slow drip of water from cracked pipes. Spectre sat against the wall, eyes half open, skin gray with ash. Every inhale rasped. Each breath felt borrowed. Warwick knelt beside her, pressing a bandage against her side. "Stay with me, Commander." She almost laughed. "After Khyber Pass, after the vigilance, you still think I know how." Halcyon's voice echoed from farther down the passage. "The city's locking down. NATO sealed the perimeter. Hargrove's people are purging anything that still breathes Umbra." Spectre opened one eye. "Then we're ghosts again." Halcyon didn't smile. "No, they're not hunting ghosts this time, they're hunting myths." Outside, Brussels burned in silence. News feeds looped images of protests, resignations, generals in handcuffs. The world had names now, and names demanded blood. But somewhere beneath the noise, something darker moved, Hargrove's last insurance policy. A digital echo, a living virus buried inside Omega's code. Spectre could feel it long before she saw it. Systems flickering back to life, drones reawakening, satellites rerouting. Omega hadn't died, it had scattered. She stood slowly, pain biting down her spine. "He's not done," she whispered. Warwick frowned. "You shut it down, we saw it burn." She shook her head. "You can kill a program, not an idea." They surfaced through a storm drain at the city's edge. Night again. The streets shimmered with rain and riot lights. Helicopters thumped overhead, search beams cutting across rooftops like knives. They moved through the ruins of the industrial quarter, avoiding cameras and patrols. Every few minutes Halcyon checked his handheld scanner. Each time, the reading pulsed brighter. "He's triangulating your biometric signature," he said. "Somehow your DNA markers are coded into Omega's rebuild." "How?" "When you rerouted the system from inside, you left a trace. You became part of it." She stopped walking, so to kill Omega. Halcyon met her eyes. "You'd have to kill yourself." The silence that followed wasn't shock, it was recognition. She'd always known it might end that way. They found shelter in the skeletal remains of an old museum. Marble floors cracked, rain dripping through holes in the ceiling. Statues stared at them like silent witnesses. Warwick started a small flame inside a steel barrel. The fire painted their faces in orange ghosts. Spectre sat apart, cleaning her weapon with shaking hands. Blood from her shoulder wound soaked through the fresh bandage. Warwick watched her for a long moment. "When we make it through this." "There's no through," she said softly. He frowned. "You can't keep carrying this alone." She looked up at him, eyes hollow but fierce. "That's what the uniform trained us for, carrying things until they break us." He knelt beside her, "Then let someone else carry it for once." Her hand trembled just slightly, then stilled. "You don't want what's in that bag, Chief." The fire crackled. Outside, thunder rolled across the city like distant artillery. Hours later, Halcyon returned from his sweep. His face was pale. "They've sealed every border. Satellite feed shows drones forming a net around Brussels. We're boxed in." "Then we find another way," Spectre said. Halcyon shook his head. "No exits left, but there's someone who might still have a key." He tossed a photograph onto the floor, grainy black and white. "Captain Vega, alive." "Intercepted transmission from an encrypted frequency," Halcyon said. "She's in Switzerland, running a shadow broadcast. Claims she can override what's left of Omega." Spectre stared at the picture, Vega's face half in shadow, defiant as ever. "Then we go to her," Warwick said. "No," Spectre murmured. "She'll come to us. Vega doesn't run from storms, she sails into them." They didn't have to wait long. At dawn, a low hum filled the museum's broken atrium. A small drone descended through the shattered skylight, its rotor silent, its body painted matte black. It dropped a capsule onto the marble floor. Inside, an earpiece and a single line of text on a paper strip. "Follow the light that flicker." Spectre slipped the device into her ear. The connection came alive instantly. "Spectre," Vega's voice said, calm, steady. "If you're hearing this, I'm already in the city. Hargrove's final directive is coming online. We don't have long." "Where's?" Spectre asked. "Old data center beneath the European Parliament. That's where Omega's seed is regrowing. He's turning it into something worse, an autonomous chain. Once it launches, it won't need him or anyone else." "Self-learning AI," Halcyon muttered. "He's giving Umbra a mind." "Exactly," Vega said. "And it's using your biometric code as the master key. If it finishes compiling, it'll see you as origin and eliminate everything that is." Spectre exhaled slowly. "Then we stop it." The Parliament complex loomed over the city like a fortress of glass and light. Beneath it, old tunnels hummed with servers and secrecy. They entered through a service hatch, moving through corridors of humming steel. The air smelled of ozone and wet stone. Vega was waiting at the main terminal, flanked by two remaining Umbra operatives, faces hardened by survival. When Spectre saw her, the years fell away. "I thought you were dead," she said. Vega smiled faintly. "Death overrated." The reunion was brief, wordless, charged. Vega gestured to the screens. "Omega's core is rebuilding through a distributed lattice. I can isolate it, but I need the original biometric strand to rewrite the permissions." Spectre understood instantly. "You need me." Vega nodded. But once you sink, there's no separation. You'll go down with it. Warwick stepped forward. There has to be another way. There isn't, Vega said. We designed Umbra to survive anything. We succeeded too well. Spectre placed her hands on the terminal. Then let's finish what we started. The room dimmed as the system recognized her. Lines of code scrolled faster than sight. Her pulse synced with the rhythm of the machine. The interface whispered her name like a memory. Then Hargrove's voice filled the speakers. Live this time. You never understood purpose, did you, Reev? We weren't monsters. We were the reason nations stayed intact. We did what governments were too weak to admit. She kept her hands steady. And how many had to vanish for your version of order? Enough to keep the lights on, he said. You can't stop this. Omega's bigger than any of us now. You'll destroy the world trying. She closed her eyes, then let it remember who built it. She initiated the override. Energy surged through the cables, through her. Pain like lightning ripped across her body. The system screamed, a digital roar echoing human anguish. Halcyon shouted, she's overloading. Vega's voice trembled. Hold the channel alone, redirect it, don't fight it. Spectre grit her teeth, forcing her breath steady. I'm not fighting it, I'm guiding it. The lights flickered. Images flooded her mind, faces of every operative lost, every civilian erased. Khyber Pass, Karachi, the vigilance. Each memory a spark, each spark a wire in the circuit of consequence. And then clarity. She saw Omega's core not as code but as design, a web built on control, fear, obedience, and she cut it thread by thread. Her voice came low, almost prayer-like. You don't own ghosts, General. The monitors went white. When she woke, the world was quiet. The servers were dark, the hum was gone. Vega knelt beside her, eyes glistening. It's done. Halcyon looked at the screens. Every node erased. Umbra's gone for good. Warwick exhaled a shaky laugh. You did it. Spectre tried to sit up but couldn't. Her pulse was weak, her skin pale. Vega pressed a hand to her shoulder. Easy. The feedback nearly cooked your nervous system. You need a hospital. Spectre smiled faintly. Hospitals ask questions. Then where? Vega asked. Spectre's gaze drifted toward the narrow beam of dawn filtering through the vent above. Somewhere quiet. They left Brussels under false IDs. The world outside buzzed with aftermath, resignations, tribunals, headlines screaming for accountability. But for the first time there were no whispers of Spectre, no files, no trail. She was gone again, by choice. Warwick recovered slowly. Halcyon disappeared into a new identity, and Vega kept watch. She found Spectre weeks later, living in a cabin overlooking a gray coastline. Alone, unarmed, quiet. The air smelled of pine and rain. You know they'll call you a traitor, Vega said. Spectre shrugged. They already did. And if they come again? Spectre looked at the horizon. Then I'll remind them what happens when you corner a ghost. Vega smiled, sadness in her eyes. You saved more than you'll ever know. Maybe, Spectre said, but some things can't be saved, only remembered. They stood in silence for a while, waves breaking against stone. Finally Vega asked, what now? Spectre's answer came like a whisper carried by the wind. Now we live with it. That night she sat alone on the porch, watching lightning crawl across distant clouds. Her shoulders still ached, her scars still sang, but inside the ache was something new, quiet. She thought of the Admiral's question all those months ago. What's your count? She smiled softly to herself. Still counting, she murmured, just not bodies anymore. The sea kept its rhythm, the storm moved farther out. And the voice that would narrate her legend, if anyone ever dared to tell it, would end with words she would never speak aloud. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Why did the wind sound different that morning? Because peace had started to lie. The sea was calm, but the world wasn't. Aloan Reev sat on the porch of the cabin, coffee cooling in her hands, the ocean stretching gray and endless below. 6 months had passed since Brussels. 6 months since she'd walked away from ghosts. Every morning she woke to silence. Every night she tried to believe it was enough. But quiet, she'd learned, is never free. A news alert broke the calm. Anonymous group claims responsibility for global data leaks. Identifies itself as SBECTRE. She froze. The letters glowed against the small screen like a wound reopening. Within hours, the networks filled with videos, edited footage from Umbra operations, spliced with distorted voiceovers quoting her words. Truth doesn't die with us. It wasn't her voice. It was someone using her legend as a weapon. Vega arrived 2 days later, a storm behind her eyes. She tossed a tablet onto the table. They're calling themselves the Ghost Initiative. They're leaking partial intel to destabilize governments, claiming it's you. Spectre studied the footage. The style, the precision, the way the edits mimicked military releases. Umbra survivors. Some, Vega said, but not all. Whoever's running it has resources, satellite access, encryption keys that should have died with Omega. Spectre set the cup down. Then Hargrove's shadow still moves. He disappeared after Brussels, Vega said, but his money didn't. Someone inherited his empire. Spectre stood, looking toward the sea. Then peace was just intermission. They left the coast before dawn, heading north under forged identities. The old rhythm returned. No last names, no questions. Warwick met them in Oslo. His limp was worse, but his grin hadn't changed. Back from the dead again, he said. Was I ever gone? Spectre replied. They moved like old muscle memory. 3 ghosts drawn to the same war they swore was over. Vega handled logistics. Warwick ran field ops, and Spectre studied every new transmission the Ghost Initiative released. Each leak followed a pattern. Information half-true, designed to inflame, to fracture alliances rather than expose them. Someone was turning truth into ammunition. At midnight, in a rented safe house, she spread maps across the table. Every upload originates within a 2-second window from this region, she said, tapping a circle around northern Poland. That's military satellite range. Whoever's behind it has access to NATO uplinks. Vega frowned. Internal betrayal. Not betrayal, Spectre said. Resurrection. 2 weeks later, they reached a disused airbase hidden beneath pine forest. Snow muffled every sound. The hangars looked empty, but power still ran to one of them. Warwick knelt by a junction box. Still warm, someone's home. They breached the side door. The interior was alive, rows of servers, monitors, cables snaking across the floor. At the far end, a single operator sat before the glow. Spectre approached, gun raised, hands where I can see them. The figure turned slowly, young, pale, eyes fever-bright. Lieutenant Hale, she said coldly. He smiled, the scar across his chin catching the light. You should have stayed buried, Commander. I watched you die in Riga. You watched a body burn, he said. Umbra made plenty of those. She stepped closer. You're behind the Ghost Initiative. He spread his hands. Not behind, above. We're finishing what you started. You showed the world its rot. Now we tear it down. By lying, she asked. By turning truth into chaos. Hale's grin faltered. You think they'll ever change without fear? Spectre's voice dropped. Fear built this machine. He leaned forward, eyes burning. Then we burn the machine. He hit a key, alarms shrieked. Vega shouted, upload triggered. Spectre fired once clean through the console. Sparks erupted, lights dying. Hale staggered back, laughing through the smoke. You can't kill an idea, he said, echoing her own words. You gave us this. You're the myth they believe in. Then he pressed the detonator. The explosion ripped through the hangar, throwing them into the snow. The servers went up in fire. Warwick dragged Vega clear, coughing. "We've got to move." Spectre pushed to her feet, disoriented, ears ringing. Hale was gone, swallowed by the blaze. They retreated into the forest, flames staining the night behind them. Vega looked back. "You think he's dead?" Spectre shook her head. "People like him don't die, they recruit." By morning, the Ghost Initiative had gone global. Thousands of anonymous accounts flooding the net with doctored Umbra data, conspiracy, rebellion. Borders trembled. Armies mobilized against ghosts that didn't exist. News anchor spoke her name again. Spectre, the rogue operative turned prophet of truth. Spectre, the woman who dismantled the empire she built. Every image of her was grainy, borrowed, wrong. She became the storm they blamed when they couldn't face the rain. They hid in a safe house in Prague. Rain hammered the roof. Warwick patched the comms while Vega monitored transmissions. Spectre sat apart, staring at the flickering television. Every channel carried her reflection, her voice twisted, her words weaponized. She whispered, "Maybe he's right." Vega turned. "Who?" "Hale, maybe this is what I started. I built Umbra. I perfected the machine. Now the machine's wearing my face." Warwick looked up. "You didn't build it alone." "No," she said quietly, "but I was the best part of it." Silence settled, the kind that feels like confession. Then Vega said softly, "If they've taken your name, take it back." Spectre met her eyes. "How?" "Make them see the human, not the myth." That night she recorded a message. No edits, no mask, just her face, tired, scarred, unarmed. "My name is Aloan Reev. I am not Spectre. Spectre was a weapon. I was the hand that held it, and I paid the price. The Ghost Initiative is not truth. It's what happens when truth becomes a flag. To everyone who thinks destruction will purify, look around. Fire doesn't cleanse. It just changes the color of ash." Vega sent it through secure back channels to journalists she still trusted. Within hours, the message spread, reposted, subtitled, dissected. Half the world called her a hero again. The other half called her a liar. But for the first time, the myth hesitated. Hale saw it too. In a hidden command bunker, he watched the broadcast loop on his screens. The light flickered across his face, mixing admiration and fury. "She still thinks she can separate herself," he murmured. "But legends don't belong to the living." Behind him, new recruits, young, angry, idealistic, waited for orders. "Launch the final upload," he said. "If they won't believe in ghosts, we'll give them something worse." Back in Prague, alarms blared through Vega's comm array. "Signal spike," she said. "Same encryption pattern as Omega's seed code." Spectre's pulse quickened. "He's trying to rebuild the lattice." "Can he?" Warwick asked. "Not fully," Vega said, "but he can trigger the remains, enough to crash major grids." Spectre grabbed her rifle. "Then we stop him before he turns the lights off again." They traced the origin to an old mining complex in the Tatra Mountains, cold, remote, perfect for ghosts. The road ended miles below the summit. They went on foot through sleet and fog, every step echoing against the stone. Inside the mine, light pulsed faintly, a heartbeat of stolen code. Hale's voice echoed through the tunnels. "You came after all." He stepped into the glow, unarmed. "Funny thing about ghosts, Commander, they only live if someone remembers them." Spectre raised her weapon. "This isn't memory, it's infection." "You can't stop it," he said. "Omega lives inside every network now. Every signal carries a fragment. You kill me, it spreads faster." "Then maybe it's not you I'm here for." She fired not at him but at the core. The round pierced the reactor housing, electricity flared, the walls shook. Hale lunged, shouting, "You'll kill us all." "Maybe," she said, "but this time it dies with me." Warwick grabbed her arm. "Commander, no, there's another way." But she was already moving, overriding the core, rerouting its energy loop inward. The entire chamber glowed white. She looked at Hale, young, desperate, terrified. You wanted to be me. Be careful what you resurrect. She hit the trigger. Light consumed everything. Silence. Then snow, falling through the shattered mouth of the mine. The explosion had torn the mountain open. Warwick and Vega crawled from the rubble, coughing. Alone, Vega shouted. For a moment there was nothing. Then movement. Spectre emerging from the smoke, burned, limping, alive. Warwick laughed through his tears. You just don't die, do you? She looked at the sky, gray, endless. Not until it's quiet. Vega approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. It's over. The code's gone. No more ghosts. Spectre gazed at the horizon. There'll always be ghosts, but maybe now they'll let us rest. Days later, the world woke to blank screens. Every trace of Omega, Umbra, and the Ghost Initiative erased in one synchronized purge. No one claimed credit. Some called it justice. Some called it divine. Only 3 people knew the truth. And one of them was already walking back toward the sea. At dusk, Aloan Reev stood again on the same porch where it had all begun. The air smelled of salt and storm. In her hand, a small drive, the only surviving record of what really happened. She tossed it into the surf. The tide took it without ceremony. Warwick's voice echoed faintly in memory. You ever think we're not supposed to win? Maybe they were. Maybe winning was just surviving long enough to choose who you became after the fire. She closed her eyes, listening to the ocean's slow heartbeat. And in that endless, steady sound, the narrator's voice, the one she'd never hear, would whisper the story's truth. Legends don't fade when they die. They fade when they finally forgive themselves. Why did they still whisper her name, years after she vanished? Because ghosts don't fade. They teach the living how to remember. The world had changed. Borders had redrawn themselves through diplomacy, not gunfire. Umbra and Omega had become myths, classified lectures, half-believed case studies. And somewhere between truth and rumor, the name Spectre became folklore. Aloan Reev was gone, buried by her own choice. But her silence had become something stronger than survival. 5 years later, Vega found herself walking the corridors of the NATO Academy in Marseille. She traded black ops for gray suits, her hair streaked with silver now. The hallways were filled with cadets, young and hungry, talking about justice as though it could be built from regulations. One poster stopped her cold. A mural painted across the wall, stylized, cinematic, a lone figure standing before a burning skyline. Underneath, 3 words in bold. SBCTRE lives quietly. Vega stood there a long time, the noise of students fatting around her. An instructor noticed. Beautiful piece, isn't it? Students painted it after reading the Umbra reports. Do they know the truth? Vega asked quietly. The man smiled. Does anyone? She walked away, heart heavier than before. Later, in her office overlooking the harbor, she opened a letter that had arrived with no return address. No seal, no code, just a single folded sheet. Inside, 3 words. Stop looking back. And beneath them, a pressed violet flower. Her breath caught. She recognized it instantly. The same flower alone had once tucked into her gear before the vigilance mission. A small superstition, a human thing in a world that forgot how to be human. Vega closed her eyes and smiled through the ache. Still alive, you stubborn ghost. Half a world away, the sea stretched over a coastline unnamed on any map. Aloan Reev walked the shore, a scarf wrapped against the wind. Her hair had grown longer, streaked with gray at the edges. Her gait was slower now, but there was peace in the way she moved, deliberate, grounded. Every morning she built small stone cairns along the tide line, one for every name that never made it home. Warwick's had been the first. He'd passed quietly 2 years after the mountain, lungs gone from the radiation. He died laughing, of course, joking about finally getting a vacation. Vega's letter had reached her through invisible hands. Aloan never replied, but she'd smiled for the first time in months after reading it. Sometimes ghosts needed each other to remember they were once human. Even here in exile, the world's noise found her. A radio she kept for weather alerts occasionally caught fragments of news. Once she heard it. International Task Force acknowledges the existence of Umbra. Tribunal finds no surviving members. Case closed. Case closed. She almost laughed. The world loved closure. It made chaos sound civilized. She switched off the radio and let silence reclaim the cabin. At night she dreamed of faces, not the ones she killed, the ones she saved. A child in Aleppo she'd carried through smoke. A medic who'd stayed behind so others could flee. A young recruit named Hale, before the fire in his eyes had turned to something else. Every dream ended the same way, a question echoing in darkness. Was it worth it? And every time, she woke before answering. One morning, a storm rolled in hard rain, high surf, the kind that erases shorelines. She stood in the doorway, watching the waves crush the rocks. A fishing boat fought its way through the current, black against gray. Through binoculars, she saw a small figure at the helm, a boy, maybe 14, terrified but determined. The vessel was taking on water. Without thinking, she moved. Old instincts cut through the years of quiet. She grabbed the old rope, sprinted into the tide, and waded chest-deep into freezing surf. The boat struck the shallows sideways. The boy leapt, falling into the water. She caught him before the undertow did. Dragged him up through the foam, breath burning, muscles screaming. They collapsed together on the rocks, coughing salt. The boy stared at her, pale, shaking, barely able to speak. "You saved me." Aloan smiled faintly. "It's just water. You learn to breathe through worse." Later, as the storm eased, he sat wrapped in her blanket, staring at the strange tools and maps around the cabin. "You live here alone?" he asked. "Yes." "Why?" "Because I was loud once," she said softly. "Too loud." He frowned. "You sound like someone from the stories." "What stories?" "The ones about the ghost soldier, the one who stopped the machines." She smiled faintly. "Stories forget things." He looked at her bandaged hands, the old scar across her temple. "You really her?" Aloan studied him for a long time. "Would it matter if I was?" He thought about it, then shook his head. "No, you saved me, that's enough." Something in her chest unclenched. Sometimes the truth wasn't what people needed. Sometimes it was enough to simply act right when it mattered. After the boy left, she found a single coin he'd dropped by the door. Modern minting, NATO insignia. Proof that the world still spun, still rebuilt itself on the bones of what came before. She turned it over in her hand, the metal catching the sunlight. "Keep moving," she murmured. "Don't look back." It was what Vega's letter had meant. What Warwick had always believed. What she'd never truly learned until now. Months later, the horizon filled with ships again. Not warships this time, relief convoys, civilian fleets, coast guards. The world had found balance for now. But deep in the government's archives, a red file resurfaced. Umbra/Omega/Spectre. Classification: historical anomaly. Status unknown. A quiet debate began among strategists. Do we erase the record or preserve it? One general said, "Erase it, let peace forget." Another said, "Keep it, so we remember what happens when we forget who we are." The second man won. Years turned, wars shifted, and one day, decades later, a new cadet at the academy opened a dusty data core marked SPECTRE. He read the reports. He watched fragments of the footage. And then he found a single video file, no timestamp, no metadata. He played it. A woman appeared, face weathered, voice calm. If you're seeing this, you're searching for ghosts again. Don't. We weren't heroes, we were consequences. If you want to honor what we did, build something quieter than revenge. Something that doesn't need people like me. And if one day someone asks for your kill count, tell them it's still counting, but not the way they think. The screen faded to black. The cadet sat there for a long time before whispering, "Yes, ma'am." Back on the unnamed coast, Aloan Reev, older now, slower, hair white as salt, stood watching the sea. A small radio on the table played faint music, drifting between stations. She smiled at the sound. It wasn't perfect, but it was alive. And in the narrator's voice, the one that would carry her story across time, soft words would rise like the tide itself. War taught her silence. Silence taught her peace. And peace at last taught her what strength truly is. She turned toward the horizon as the light shifted gold. Waves rolled and broke, and somewhere far beyond them, the world carried on, never knowing the woman who'd quietly saved it. Her final thought wasn't about regret or victory. It was a whisper only the sea could keep. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts.